Good afternoon and welcome back. Welcome back to those of us who are enjoying the splendid accommodations, meeting room facilities of the Westin Hotel in Indianapolis, and welcome back to those who are viewing from afar on the live video stream. I'm George Koo, and I'm associated with something that has been referred to this morning as NALOA, which I'm told by a colleague is the second most common Polynesian name given to second-born children. This session, as was foreshadowed earlier, is about the resources that NALOA and its various partners, with support from Lumina Foundation and others, are going to be making available, actually, to add to what already exists. As was mentioned this morning in the session that Jillian Kinsey chaired, we have been harvesting the learnings from the work of the DQP and more recently tuning to learn how campuses are using these tools and their proxies to reconnect the learning outcomes to the kinds of things that are going on in classrooms. Jamie Marasotis in his opening address mentioned the commitment on the part of Lumina and others to broaden and deepen the work using the DQP and tuning. And NALOA, as a partner with others, is committed to that task. And so this session is about introducing the resources that are presently available and continuing to be developed by NALOA and others. We have kind of 4 sets of resources we're going to be briefly mentioning today. I wanted NALOA to actually have a 4-day conference so that we could spend a full day on each of the sets of resources, but for some reason that didn't happen. You have already met some, and you'll meet more, of NALOA people. I just want to note that Stan Eichenberry refuses to come to the podium. Is he in the room? Stan is kind of my my partner at NALOA, which is co-located at the University of Illinois and Indiana University. I also just want to remind you that there were those note cards in the luncheon session, and those of you who are watching from afar, we're very eager to hear from you how NALOA can further assist in this work. So without further ado, let me introduce Natasha Jankowski and Christine Marson. Nothing happens today if it doesn't have a website. And we've had the good fortune of making NALOA a go-to place for assessment work, and now we're broadening that to include the DQP and tuning. So Natasha and Christine.
Thank you. So for those here in person and those joining us online, we invite you to visit the new website that was unveiled today, and you can find it at www.degreeprofile.org. And what you're seeing on the screen now is the home page. So the home page will give you a bit of information about the DQP, and then you can decide how you want to engage and what you want to learn from the work. So we're going to advance this slide, and you'll see here the drop-down menu at the top, which says DQP and tuning in action, and hopefully you can see the different options that you can select from if you choose that drop-down menu. I definitely want to point out that the DQP is definitely more of the focus on this website right now, but over time we definitely will have more tuning available for viewing on the site. And many improvements will be made on this over time and over the next few months, and we certainly welcome your feedback as we improve this website. The next slide that you'll see here are the resources available. So this is the drop-down menu if you were to click on the resources. And what's highlighted is download the DQP resources. And if you were to click on that, you will see this. And I'm pointing this out on purpose because I'm hopeful that you will be interested in downloading an electronic version of the DQP, and this is where you would want to go to find that. Now I'm going to turn it over to Natasha to take us through more sections of the website.
Sure, and I'll be brief with this. I think please take the time to go and explore the website. And I really want to thank everyone that was involved in putting this together. There was a lot of collaborative effort into this, and so thank you for all the feedback. And we very much welcome your feedback as you begin to navigate and engage with the website. And so if there are materials there that you would like to see that aren't, please do let us know. And please check back because we will be updating the information. There's also a way that you can join the conversation. And so if you'd like to receive updates to this or talk with other institutions that are doing this work, please feel free to go to the website and check that out. But just quickly, some of the things that you can find here is a map of where this work is happening. And you can look, Utah is highlighted here. So you can see which of the institutions are involved with DQP work and which are doing tuning and who's doing a bit of both. And so this is a nice sort of way to look maybe as you're thinking about broadening your work and sustaining efforts, finding additional partners that are near you to begin to start thinking about connecting with. We also have case studies of institutions that have been doing this work and what their process was, how they were involved, and we'll be adding to these. If you would like to be a case study, do let us know. We're always interested in talking with people about their work. And we also have examples of institutions that have done this. And some of the things here that were questions that happened earlier today was how do you involve employers, right? And North Dakota is a good example of that and has an example of writing about that. Juniata College is a good example that shared how they involve students in this process. Another one that came up was how do you get student fairs involved, and Berry College is a good example of that. And so if you're looking for how have other institutions done this, those are provided on the website. One of the other elements, and I'm going to turn this now over to George and Tina, is information on the coaches.
So over the last 2.5 years or so, NOLOA but primarily the 4 DQP authors have made themselves available to institutions that are looking to learn both more about the DQP and what strategies, tactics might be used to not just introduce it, but to get campuses, faculty members, staff members, and so forth working with it. This next round of work, we're pleased that we will broaden the number, increase the number of people who are available. We have a set of DQP tuning coaches, and I want to turn to Tina Gridiron from Lumina to talk just very briefly about that group.
So over the last few years, we heard quite a bit from the field and from our colleagues about the value of having the authors and the value of having NOLOA colleagues come to their campus and help them understand not just the what of what the DQP is or what tuning is all about, but the how. And in hearing from the field, we, as a foundation, thought it would be helpful to seed some support for a collection of leaders from across the country to advance and enhance the how to strengthen and deepen the work around DQP and tuning. We have a great collection of folks that have experience and expertise and have been in the difficult spaces and also the rewarding spaces of rolling out and rolling up their sleeves around DQP and tuning, and Lumina sees it as an opportunity to get a sense. How many campuses will take us up on this offer to have a coach, and what they see as the value add of bringing someone to their campus to assist in the how as we move forward. Now is a great time for us to increase not just the 500 institutions that we've already identified moving in this space, but to increase the number to thousands of institutions that are making a difference and seeing this as a value add opportunity. So George is going to give us a sense of who we have on the docket available to the institutions on the webcast and those in the room to take advantage of our coaching assistance.
So, but first, you might get your checkbooks out because we're going to go to the highest bidder to get a DQP coach. Those of us in the room have packets, and in the packet we have 2 items that bear specifically on the coaching activity. One is the request a visit from a DQP tuning coach. This is the activity that Tina alluded to. Through the good resources of Lumina, we're able to make these folks available one time only. You must act soon. One-day campus visit. You'll be hearing more about this. The flyer in the packet and posted on the website will give you some of that information. We are really fortunate to have a distinctively talented group. 10 of the 11 coaches we invited. I should say that these are all folks who've had either direct experience with the DQP and or tuning. as well as work with campus change improvement efforts. And as I said, 10 of the 11 are able to be with us today. We are meeting as a group. We met for several hours yesterday. We're meeting again following this session if they're still awake. We're going to force them to work even harder today. So they're assembled, I think, most of them at the front of the room. Maybe just briefly call their name, ask them to stand, and you'll hold your applause, won't you? I thought you would. Okay. Sandra Bailey from the Oregon Institute of Technology. Tammy Eggleston from McKendree University. Tyrone Freeman from right here in Indianapolis, IUPUI. Where are you, Tyrone? Oh, that's right. You've got double duty. I forgot. Paul Lingenfelter. We heard from him from the mic this morning, former exec at SHIO and now a NOLOA senior scholar. David Marshall from Cal State University, San Bernardino. David's also been directly involved with IEBC on the tuning initiative. Elise Martin from Middlesex. We saw her here on the dais earlier. Dan McInerney from Utah State. We heard also from the mic. Nancy Quam Wickham from Cal State University, Long Beach. Sharon Valenti from Marymount, California University. And Erica Williams, who we also heard from the mic, North Carolina A&T State University. Not with us. You know, these people who have provost or vice president jobs can't always go where they want to go when they want to go, and that's Tim Rennick, whose bio you'll also find in your packet. So thank you for being here. Thank you for standing. You can sit now. Just another reminder. Just another reminder that we're very serious about moving resources into your hands that you can use in beneficial ways as you see fit on the campus. And these folks are an extension of what we're learning, and we hope to continue to learn more from them. We have another set of resources that Natasha Jankowski and David Marshall will introduce now, something we are calling a roadmap for the moment. But these are some of the things we've learned so far from the 500 places, and we'll give it to Natasha.
Sure. So available on the website is the roadmap. And really what the roadmap is something that was done in conjunction with the Institute for Evidence-Based Change in IUBC. And I thank David for his wonderful contributions to that effort and his thinking on this, of looking at what we've learned from institutions that have been involved with DQP and tuning and how they did it. But more so that, how do you bring these two efforts together? And what are the different avenues in? What have been the various ways that institutions have engaged with this work and thought about doing it? And where might they need to think about going? And so with that, it was very much a collaborative approach. And I will say, you can look on the website and click through it. We are formatting you an incredibly lovely downloadable version. So check back for that in the upcoming week. But right now you can just look across the website to see it. But I'm going to turn to David to tell you a little bit more about what's in it.
Thanks, Natasha. The roadmap is grounded in 5 principles that really kind of undergird work with tuning in the DQP. And you've already heard some of these throughout the morning session. First, both initiatives contribute to the definition of coherent and intentional educational pathways for students. Second, the DQP and tuning encourage the development of sequenced, integrated learning experience that facilitate transfer of knowledge and skills into a variety of contexts. Third, because these initiatives prompt reflection on and definition of student learning, they also prompt transparency of expectations for students. Fourth, engagement with the DQP and tuning encourage approaches to quality assurance that foreground meaningful assessment that yields more intentional decisions about how to facilitate student learning. And finally, both tuning and the DQP address Lumina Foundation's equity agenda, which we heard some mention of this morning. Now, I think it's important also to note that there's not a right way to utilize the DQP and tuning, that every institution has its own unique context, culture, demographics, personnel, politics, and so what we've offered is a roadmap. And if you think about the metaphor for a moment, a roadmap doesn't show a single path to a destination. Even Google Maps offers you multiple routes. And so our roadmap does something similar. It offers a variety of strategies that have been utilized in various projects around the country with tuning and the DQP, and offers up sort of these productive strategies for use on your own campuses or within organizations. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So some of the things that you'll find in here is a conversation about institutional readiness. And I think that came up in the panel that Jillian moderated of institutions doing this work, of what kind of considerations do you need to think about to see if you're ready as an institution to really fully engage with either of these processes and in a way that fits with what's happening. But also thinking about how are you clearly communicating the value and the purpose of engaging and using the DQP or a tuning process? And so we've tried to provide examples from institutions, reflective questions to think about this work, and then also the considerations of who do you involve, right? So thinking about the registrars and institutional research and student affairs and the alumni and the different groups that, while it is a faculty-driven process, the different people that come into play as you start to think about the full experience of a system of education that our students move through, and thinking about this really from that student-centered perspective. So it's sort of also broken into areas that we've seen institutions move through in terms of looking at and reviewing and aligning their outcomes. And what is that process? What does that look like? What are the various ways institutions have done that? What does it mean to align your learning outcomes in a meaningful way, to create those scaffolded and sequenced learning experiences for our students? And then also really getting into the assessment of student learning, because if this is really about every student, at the end of the day, we know that's a different kind of approach to assessment. And Peter Yule wrote a lovely occasional paper on this topic that's in there. But thinking, and there's also an appendix in the DQP on assessment related to this. But how do we think about that in different ways as institutions doing this work? We've also added a piece on there of thinking about what are the problems and issues we're going to address as we move this forward, as we're thinking about being sustainable. So these are the issues of the transcripts. These are the issues of the diploma supplements. These are how are we talking about this in meaningful ways? How are we creating institutional knowledge to have these efforts continue to move forward? With that said, this is a resource that will evolve. So as we learn more, I see this being updated, and as it's a mirror back to the field, what we're learning from institutions. So again, this is an opportunity where we're asking you if there is something in here that you would like to see that you don't. As you engage with this document, please do let us know, and we can provide those additional information. But some of the resources that are available is information on curriculum mapping, more broadly than just mapping courses, but really thinking about mapping educational experiences across the entire institution, and thinking about that in different ways. And yeah, I would just really welcome you to go to the website, look at what's available, and give us feedback on what else you'd like to see.
Before you hold that slide, because third from the bottom, the label is signature assignments, which is a nice segue into really the last set of resources we're going to mention here today. As we moved around the country with, for example, our partners at AAC&U, I remember vividly hearing a year ago, or more now, from the field, from faculty saying, what would really be helpful to move this work, to accelerate it, would be to see examples of the kinds of assignments that draw on or would lead to the kinds of proficiencies that the DQP is describing. And from that, we began an initiative called the Assignment Library. And I'm going to turn to Natasha and Tyrone Freeman. Natasha, again. Natasha, how did you get all these talking spots on the panel? How did that work?
Money.
Money.
Yeah. No, that was a beautiful segue, but I'm actually going to take a moment and say one additional thing that you can find on the website is a resource kit, which is much broader than the roadmap, but provides additional resources for institutions for this work. So another place to learn this information. But yes, so the assignment library is something that really we heard from the field and emerged from faculty asking for this. And in response to that, Pat Hutchings deserves a huge hats off at this moment. unfortunate she could not be here with us. She's an Aloha Senior Scholar, but her hand is very influential in her thinking in this process of how do we get faculty sitting down and talking about their assignments, and what does it mean to have an assignment that elicits a student's demonstration of an actual proficiency, and how do you know that? And so through getting faculty together in rooms and having conversations and reviewing their assignments, revising them, taking them into the classroom and testing them, revising them again and coming back, and Tyrone made it through and is still a very happy person, so it's a good positive experience to go through. We have faculty vetted assignments that are linked to DQP proficiencies that we now have available in an online assignment library. And this is another one of those. This will continue to evolve. We welcome submissions to the library as you're thinking about your assignment, and if you want updates on anything that we're changing, please join the email list. We'll let you know as it comes. But let me just give you a quick overview of how to navigate this. So if you click on Browse Our Library, you'll get to a page that has a variety of tags. And so you can search for different elements of an assignment that you're interested in. So if you're wondering, is there a general education assignment at an associate's level that really gets at applied learning, you can go in here and just really kind of explore and poke around and see the different assignments that are available from faculty for this. Once you select something, you'll get taken to a page that looks like this on your screen, and the title, each assignment has a title, and if you click on the title, then you'll get more information about it, but you can also see the tags that are associated with that assignment, so you can sort of do a bit more sorting of what exactly it is that you're looking for, or if you're just browsing to see what's out there, please feel free to click around. And Tyrone has been nice enough that we're using his assignment as an example, so I will turn this over to him to talk about the type of information that we provide and what you can find when you go there.
Thank you, Natasha. I'm on the faculty of the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy here in Indianapolis at the campus of IUPUI. And we represent an emerging interdisciplinary field called philanthropic studies. And philanthropic studies uses the liberal arts to examine philanthropy as a human phenomenon. We offer BA, MA, and PhD degrees in this area, and our BA degree not only prepares graduates to enter nonprofit organizations or even private or public organizations dedicated to social change, but also to lead lives of service and civic engagement. And so when you look at this screen, you'll see a signature assignment that our faculty have developed called the Philanthropic Autobiography. And this is something that our new majors take in the first course. And it sets the tone for their movement through the rest of the curriculum because it gives them a basis for identifying their personal connection to philanthropy. It's based on two ideas that we as a faculty hold. First is a broad-based definition of philanthropy as voluntary action for the public good based upon deeply held values about how to change society. And the second is that each one of us, no matter who we are or where we come from, have some sort of connection to philanthropy, even if we do not use that term or think of ourselves in that way. And so this assignment gives students a chance to compose a brief essay, in this instance 3 pages, to explore their involvement and their experiences with nonprofit organizations, causes, movements, volunteering, a range of giving and helping behaviors by the reservoir of experiences that they can draw from as they move through the program. It also is based on this idea of storytelling as a way of helping students make sense of their experience as college students, as citizens, and as graduates who are ready for graduate school or employment. In relation to the DQP, it connects to the applied learning area because, again, this connection with the personal experiences that the students have to knowledge in the field of philanthropic studies. The specialized knowledge area by enabling students to explore definitions and concepts and terminologies, as well as the boundaries of philanthropic action and the nonprofit sector. And within those, also the communication fluency area or skill, because it starts as a written narrative that they compose in the first course. There are other courses that will have them draw upon it again to reconsider it now that there are a few more courses into the sequence. They've had other experiences. But then it comes full circle in our senior capstone, which I teach with a colleague, where we have them, the first thing they do is draw that out, and they consider again their new experiences, they revise it, and then it becomes a basis for them to create a digital story, which is a great pedagogy if you're not familiar with it, where they create a multimedia presentation to images, and they're talking about how they have demonstrated their successful achievement of learning outcomes in the program, and again are now ready for graduate school or for employment. And so when you look at the database, let's move the slide for me. Thank you. The first is the overview that Natasha explained that gives you that sense of what the assignment is and how it connects to DQP. The second is an actual copy of the assignment as I use it, so you can use that, you can adapt it, download it. And then the last is just an example of a rubric that could be, again, adapted to your purposes to help you figure out how you want to use it. If you want to use it as is to explore issues related to philanthropy and community, that's fine. We also are aware of other areas such as English. Some English professors have their students do literacy autobiographies to explore their connections to reading and literature throughout their lives. We could imagine this being used in any number of fields, again, to help new students get connected to that field and think about the experiences that they bring to it, and will continue to process and revisit as they move through the curriculum.
And just one additional note, one thing that will be coming by the end of this week or next to this is an ability for faculty to comment on the assignment. So how have they modified it? How have they used it in different courses? How have they changed the rubric to fit their needs? And so really starting a conversation at a community level around different assignments that are eliciting these outcomes in meaningful ways. And also please go back to the assignment library. We will be having in the next year 2 additional faculty gatherings. We refer to the assignment meetings as charrettes, an architecture term. We can thank Paul for the lovely terminology for that. And so focused on adjunct faculty, one of the things that came from our original charrettes was a conversation from faculty that said, if I want to know if my assignment works for students, I ask the adjunct faculty because their assignments travel. They work for multiple institutions. Their assignments need to move with them. And I think that's an interesting way we haven't thought about our non-tenure track faculty. And so hoping to have a focus with that. But we will be advertising when the charrettes are happening on the assignment library website. So if you know of interested faculty or want to have someone come, please do check back for that. And we'll share that information as we set dates.
NALOA is not the only group that's working in this territory. AC&U, through various projects, are also collecting examples of assignments. We're going to try to figure out how we can get this work better connected, so we're creating more synergy out of this and not forcing people or expecting people to go to multiple places. So there'll be a variety of cross links, I hope. And all of this work can't be done by 11 coaches and 4 authors and a few people at NALOA. It does require partnerships across multiple projects, and so we're looking forward to trying to coordinate that. And as we've said multiple times, I hope you get the drift, just as the DQP itself evolved over time, these resources will evolve over time. We'll get better, they'll be richer, they'll be more useful, there'll be additional resources added. That's the future we envision. We're not quite sure how we're going to do it, but that's the future we envision. And so, as Natasha has said several times, really the go-to place will be the DQP website. NALOA will do its best, as will other partners, to let you know when we've got new stuff up. I'll just say, from a personal point of view, it's an honor for me and my NALOA colleagues to be involved in this, because we have a shot at making a difference, the kind of difference that we heard about this morning. So if you'll join me in thanking these good folks for their time and talents. And now we're going to turn to Holly Zanville, who is somewhere in this room, I hope, or she thought we'd go over, or what? Well, good, because we're going to hear now about some of the things that are going to be coming online in addition to this work.
Hi, everybody. Well, we thought it would be a good thing this afternoon to share with you information about some new investments we're making to complement the release of the DQP today. And so I wanted to go through those lists. I know the folks that are here in the room have those investments on a form that's in your packets, and for those people who are in online world today, we'll be putting that list of new projects at the Lumina website. One of the things we wanted to say about this is all these investments are really designed to increase the attainment of high-quality credentials through expanding the use of the DQP and tuning with a big goal, and the goal is to build a learning-based credential system. So it's not necessarily about the tool, it's about what we're using the tool for, and I think you'll see the DQP and tuning coaches, the online assignment library, the roadmap to help with enhancing student learning with a focus on implementing the DQP and tuning, and then the enhanced website, because we do think actually the websites are going to be really, really important going forward, so that there's a place where folks, especially faculty, can get the latest, greatest about news and events and the different kind of documents that can help everyone in their work. And Lumina is really going to be supporting these particular efforts, those first four, for a 4-year period. So we're anxious to see how well that goes and what additional work might be needed. There will be 10 additional efforts underway, and these are the ones that I really wanted to highlight for you this afternoon. And I'm going to be asking the folks who are leading this work up to stand at some point, not only to thank them for the work that they have been doing, that they will do with this new work, but really to help any of you who may want to connect with them, to know who they are, because there may be some opportunities for you to do some collaboration with them on something. And I think you'll get a sense of that when you get a sense of the scale for some of that work. So the fifth project, which falls the fifth of that first section of ones, is being led by the Association of American Colleges and Universities, AAC&U, to assist with widespread implementation of the DQP and tuning from a faculty development perspective. AAC&U is going to be developing a network of resources and innovation hubs in 10 states to involve potentially as many as 168 institutions, and of course the faculty in those institutions, to help faculty use the DQP and tuning to make general education more effective and transferable, to develop and assess students' DQP proficiencies, and to use DQP and tuning to improve faculty teaching in multiple modes, such as face-to-face, online, and blended teaching. And those innovation hubs are they're not just about DQP and tuning. I think we all know in this room that there's a lot of other important resources that faculty have available and need to use, particularly around general ed issues, LEAP, and others. And so those resources and innovation hubs are going to make available whatever faculty need in order to do the kind of curricular coherence and assessment work that we're all calling for. And Carol Schneider, president of AAC&U, and David Paris, vice president for Integrative Liberal Learning and the Global Commons, that's quite a title, at AAC&U are here, and I hope they'll stand up, so if you don't know them and you want to potentially find a way to be involved in that work, that you'll know who to go to. So. Yep. I was going to mention her name, but she wasn't going to be here, and I didn't know how nice that was to say she couldn't be here today. So there's 4 efforts then that are in a category that we're calling building a national credential system. And you heard a little flavor of that in the remarks this morning from Jamie Marasotis. And this is work we're especially interested in, is what does it mean as there are more and more different kinds of credentials that are dropping onto the scene. And the first one on this list is an effort by the Corporation for Skilled Workforce. It's working in partnership with CLASP, the Center for Law and Social Policy. And together they're going to be providing technical assistance and research in creating a beta credential framework, we're going to use the word framework here, that has a key aim to assist in communicating and connecting the many diverse credentials that are being awarded in the U.S. And frankly, new ones are likely to be emerging in the years to come that we don't even know about yet. This work will be focusing especially on exploring the potential connections between the DQP and tuning, between industry-recognized common employability skills, that's another framework that some of you know about, but maybe not everybody, and other emerging credential frameworks, including those in development in other nations. So Larry Good, the chair and co-founder and senior policy fellow at the Corporation for Skilled Workforce, and Evelyn Gansglass, senior fellow at CLASP, are here today, and I hope you'll stand so everybody can know you. And because we all know how important websites are, Larry and Evelyn and her colleagues are also going to be working on creating a new website to inform an evolving national dialogue on the changing credential environment, where the documents really can reside around the need for a new credential system potentially that could encompass degrees, certifications, certificates, licenses, apprenticeships, and other credentials, and the list could go longer, but those are the key ones, and we're wondering how are we going to understand that, and so that website is going to be collecting information that a lot of folks need in order to start having a serious national conversation about that. There's another very interesting development that is being undertaken by the National Network of Businesses and industry associations. I'll just refer to it as the network for short. This group is only essentially a year old, and it's a network that's currently composed of 21 national business and industry associations that are representing the primary sectors of the U.S. economy. And in fact, we think that that group of 21 industry sectors probably represents about 75% of the jobs in the United States or will in the future. So to get them all in a room talking about these kinds of issues is really, really meaningful. This network is really being co-managed right now by the ACT Foundation and the Business Roundtable with support from multiple foundations, including Lumina. The new project that we're going to be supporting for the next couple of years is going to be focusing on a key issue. Will human resources, the HR folks, hire for competency? Will they really recognize the efforts that so many of you in this room are making to identify clear learning outcomes leading to quality credentials? Because if HR doesn't start paying attention to competencies, it's likely that higher education is not going to move too fast to make those kind of changes in the programs and impact even the students' transcripts. So we're extremely interested in using industry as a lever and understanding that world better. The new work is going to be exploring the usefulness of the DQP and other credential frameworks for competency mapping, for creating a common language of employability skills, working on ways to ensure that industry credentials align with learning programs at our colleges and job opportunities, and promoting whatever human resources processes that do focus on hiring for competencies rather than degrees alone. And I'm very pleased that Parminder Jassal, the CEO of the ACT Foundation, is with us today, as well as Eileen Pickett, who works closely with the National Network and comes out of the industry world. So there they are. You may not know them, but you should. So the last project in this category is very unique because it's going to be looking at the major classification system for higher education, the Carnegie Classification System. As most of you know, the Carnegie Classification System has been a leading framework for recognizing and describing institutional diversity in U.S. higher education for the past 40 years. The Carnegie Classification System is migrating, as we speak, to the Indiana University Center for Post-Secondary Research. Under the new management plan, future work is going to be implementing some much-needed research and planning to inform 2015 and subsequent revisions to the Carnegie Classification System to include attention to the increasing array of credentials of value that are awarded by higher education institutions. This grant that Lumina is making is going to be supporting the updating of the Carnegie Classification System that's informed by research and planning that will include an assessment of the usefulness of the degree qualifications profile and other credential frameworks. So we're really wondering whether or not there is some way that we can create a synergy of information as the classification system is updated. And we'd like to recognize Vic Borden, who's a professor of educational leadership and policy studies at Indiana University Bloomington, who's going to be leading this effort. So there's 5 additional projects that fall into a category to create learner-centered, student-based pathways to quality credentials. And the pathways work says a lot about transfer issues, and we've already touched on transfer quite a bit today. The first project on this list is the Interstate Passport Initiative that's being undertaken by WICHE, the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education. WICHE is going to be working with 34 institutions in 13 states to implement interstate block transfer agreements using the Passport Learning Outcomes and Proficiency Criteria for Transfer, sorry. But this is a tool that they've already developed and tested, and this is a tool that enables block transfer of outcomes-based general education in 9 lower division content areas. The faculty have been really working hard on this, and they've already proved in a pilot group of states this can work. So this next effort is going to be really expanding to many more states with the goal, maybe hopefully someday, that they'll get to all states in the U.S. and that'll be a national solution, which will be unbelievable if we get that far. At any rate, this work builds on the WICHE Interstate Passports effort that was launched in 2011 with a pilot group of states to address issues of students swirling and streamlining transfer pathways to graduation. All those students who attend multiple institutions across state lines that we need some kind of better solutions for than what we have today. So we'd like to recognize Pat Shea, who's the Director of Academic Leadership Initiatives at WICHE, who's going to be leading this work. And we're also really pleased to share some late breaking news that we're allowed to announce on behalf of a fellow foundation, is that this interstate transfer work is also going to be co-funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And there are 3 folks who are here from the Gates Foundation today with us: Jason Palmer, Deputy Director of Post-Secondary Success, Stacy Clausen, Senior Program Officer, and Richard Aram, a Senior Fellow with Gates. So if you're here, stand. I think a lot of you who know Lumina know that we like to leverage funds wherever we can, and I'm sure Gates feels the same way. So another effort we're very excited about is going to be contributing to expanding transfer pathways. And this is really about data and what do we do in order to help students move more effectively, particularly among states. So with the rapidly increasing mobility of students, there really is growing need to enable the efficient, secure exchange of student records, including transcripts and other documents between institutions. This is the process that's required to determine a student's eligibility for a reverse transfer degree. For those students who have transferred from a community college to a four-year institution, and then they're going to be completing their requirements for the associate degree by combining their credits from the community college and the university, if the universities can figure out how to share records well, and if the community college can conduct the degree audit. To meet this need, the institutions need better data in order to sit down and do those processes. So the National Student Clearinghouse is going to be expanding their data capacity to enable institutions, those that are willing, that want to share student academic records across the states with a major focus on reverse transfer. This work will help increase associate degree completion through reverse transfer by expediting the electronic movement of student academic records for those students who already have 60 or more credits, regardless of the states in which they've enrolled. We know 60 credits doesn't necessarily equate to an associate degree, but institutions have to do a degree audit, and they have to be able to look at the learning that the students completed, and we think that having the data capacity through the clearinghouse is really going to help them. So we're very excited about the Student Clearinghouse being able to expand their data capacity. We don't have anybody from the Student Clearinghouse with us today, but you'll be seeing, those of you who particularly see a lot of higher ed news coming in, that they're going to be having some summits and be putting out, be at a lot of conferences in which they're going to be talking about their capacity, so that institutions that want to can sort of sign up and work with them so that they'll have access to the data. So here's another project that is also extremely interesting. It's a unique initiative that's going to be focusing on expanding math pathways. There's growing consensus among math leaders from around the country that college algebra should not be the default college-level gateway math course, and then instead should only be required for those students who intend to enter programs of study that require pre-calculus or calculus. Yet thousands of students we know each year are expected to prepare for, enroll, and complete a course that's really not essential to their success in their chosen program of study. And large numbers of students, unfortunately, who are not prepared for college algebra end up in remedial courses from which many of them never emerge. So to address this bottleneck, and maybe bottleneck is even too soft of a word for this problem, but to address this problem in higher education program paths, Complete College America, some of you know them as CCA, is going to be working closely with 6 to 8 states on a Math Pathways initiative to reduce barriers to enrollment and completion presented by the college algebra issue. And Stan Jones, who leads CCA, is with us today. And Stan, we're counting on you to fix the math problem. And that especially comes from my son and I. We have a long history of problems with math. Another really, really interesting and important project is a very large-scale effort called the Multi-State Collaborative on Military Credit, which is going to be taking on some critically needed work to build better pathways for veterans and their families. The Midwestern Higher Education Compact, also known as MAC, is going to be assisting an interstate partnership of 13 states to translate the competencies that are acquired by veterans through their military training and their experience toward college credentials. States are going to be exchanging information and sharing best practices in areas such as articulation of credit, certification and licensure, communications, and technology. We'd like to recognize Chris Rasmussen, who's the Vice President for Research and Policy Analysis for MEC, who's going to be leading this effort for the Multi-State Collaborative, and Ken Sauer, who's the Senior Associate Commissioner and Chief Academic Officer for the Indiana Commission for Higher Ed. Ken, that's just too long. And Ken has really been very instrumental behind the scenes in moving this work forward among the original multi-state network, which really began with 7 states, and now it's expanded to 13 states. So I hope you'll stand up and be recognized. And last but not least, because this is a really, really important project as well, it's a new investment that's very unique that is called the National Year of Service Effort, with partners, the Franklin Project, Cisco, and the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning's Learning Counts platform. Many of you know that's the service that CALE provides to make prior learning assessment portfolio work available to students who are trying to obtain prior learning assessments. The National Conference on Citizenship will be setting up pathways to assess college-level learning that occurs during a national year of service for college credit. It's not enough to go out and do a year of service. It's really important if you were really meeting some learning outcomes to have some of that credited. That will accelerate your progress, obviously, toward degree completion and hold down, hopefully, the costs as well of your credential. The DQP is going to be used to help identify the proficiencies to be developed during the year of service. This work, we think, holds tremendous potential for increasing the value of national service as a form of experiential learning, and really for providing some aligned connections to degree-granting institutions through online coursework, through some portfolio assessments, and a new service transcript that would be, we believe, recognized by post-secondary institutions and then will carry currency in the marketplace. We'd like to recognize Shirley Sagawa, who's the Chief Service Officer at the National Conference on Citizenship, and also 2 of her partners who are here, Pam Tate, who's the President and CEO of CALE, and Scott Campbell, Vice President for Higher Ed at CALE, who we think are going to be helpful in trying to explain why is it so difficult to get higher education to set up these e-portfolios around learning outcomes for work. So we would love to recognize you all. Well, these are Lumina's 2014 investments to complement the release of the DQP today, and we're very excited about the promise of this work. One other investment that I want to add as I close is our contribution to snail mail and traditional print copies. I want to tell you, I attended a meeting over a year ago. Actually, I think George was there, and Peter Yule was there, and Paul was there, of the Council of Independent Colleges who was doing a consortial approach, and the institutions that they were working with around DQP and tuning were all in attendance. And at one point, it was at the end of the meeting, and we were saying, what can we do to be more helpful? You know, tell us anything. And a faculty member stood up, and she held up the beta version of the DQP, and she said, I just can't tell you how important it was to have a print copy of this when I'm at faculty meetings. She said, we don't have any money in my college to print copies. And so I was kind of appalled, although I know I've been there before when I lived on the other side in higher education. And so we sort of told her, of course, we can make print copies available. You know, we're hoping that more and more there will be the websites and digital copies, but we know print copies are really, really important. So we want you to know that today there's a giant bulk mailing going out of 6,000 to 6,000 sites of the DQP copies to every higher ed institution in the United States, to all the accrediting associations, and I think the specialized ones, to the educational associations. And 2 copies are going to the higher ed institutions, one for the president, one for the chief, the CAO. So this will be good news, and there'll be information in there about some of these other, the coaches and some of the other resources that folks will be able to know about. And then if institutions want print copies, you can go to the new DQP site and you can request copies. And 2 weeks ago, an institution called our folks and said they wanted 500 copies. And we didn't balk. We said, can just wait till the new version is out. We just don't want to send you 500 of the old ones. So we do want you to know that we are wanting to make a commitment. If print copies makes it easier, we will provide print copies. So as I close, we know that many of you are wondering about the way forward, what else might be coming. And we know that there's a tremendous amount of work to do, and we are going to be considering investments for 2015, and we hope the years beyond. because this isn't going to be done anytime soon. We heard this morning a decade maybe of this kind of work, maybe more. So we'll be doing whatever we can within our available resources to try to help to support work, and we'll rely on a lot of you to share with us if you had limited resources, and we all do have limited resources, where would you put your money? Where can we get the biggest bang for the buck? And so we're going to be continuing to look for good ideas. So we want to thank all of you, not just the new grantees, but the ones, all of you are doing such incredible pioneering work. You probably really are the early innovators, the ones in the room and probably the ones online today. So thanks so much for hanging with us and doing this work, and we'll do whatever we can to do our part as well. And I think, Dwayne, it might be time for the town hall meeting now. So thanks. Well, we'll take questions if you want to ask questions about where we go from here, and Dwayne can help answer those too.
I'm sorry, you may have said this. Did you say you're mailing a packet to VPs of Student Affairs also, or are they not on the list?
No, we did not. Where's Dave Powell? There he is. We didn't. No, the answer is no, but I'm thinking we should. We could do another mailing.
We could do a joint mailing. So then I know, Kevin, you're here also somewhere. I'm thinking NASPA and ACPA could joint mail so we know they know it's coming with a sense of how important this is within student affairs. We wouldn't, I think that this man is already probably gone today, but we could have, let's have a conversation. You guys have a conversation and we'll come up with a plan. That's a great idea. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. All right. Now my instructions here say that I'm to invite the DQP authors, the NALOA staff, and panelists from the various sessions to sit in the front of the room to answer questions. I have no idea how we're going to make that work, but I think sit at these front tables perhaps. Cliff, you find a place to sit? Yeah. Nobody has to move if you don't want to, but just so long as you're close by. And we're going to invite you to come up. This is a chance to ask questions that didn't come up, to follow up on questions. If any of you were not able to ask a question, or if we ran out of time and you would like to direct a question to any of the panelists or any of the panels, this is a time when you can do that, and or any of the speakers, or just raise issues or make comments that you think after everything that we've talked about makes sense. I'm going to start, while you're thinking about questions, if you want to come up to the mics, I'm going to start with the stack of cards that I've got, which are mostly questions that have come in from online observers and participants. And so I thank you all for those questions. And I'm going to ask a couple that, after going through, that really struck me as being very interesting and that follow up on some specific issues that I do think need some additional follow-up. I'm going to combine a couple of them, not because the questions need to be combined, but because I thought they kind of hit on the same theme. But you respondents, I want you to feel free to uncombine them if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the question out. I'm going to let any of you that feel that you'd have something to say to that simply take one of the mics. There's mics, I understand, I think around. If not, just grab one of the mics off the stand there and we'll have a conversation about it. All right, here's the first question, or first two. I'm going to read them both. We heard this morning from Tony Carnevale that poor students get training and wealthier students get education. Don't all students need a mix of both? All right, hold that thought. The next question, which I think is a very different question, but I'm going to force into being combined, is how does the DQP level the cultural playing field to honor diversity? Now, the reason I'm combining these two questions is I think they both speak to this question of whether our current system is stratifying or targeting students, particular students, with particular backgrounds into particular types of study, particular types of institutions, particular pathways, and whether the DQP can be a tool to help break down those sorts of narrow pathways, broaden opportunities for students who have different kinds of backgrounds than those that traditionally go into the pathways that are well established today. Now, I'll be devil's advocate as well and say, is it entirely possible that the DQP and efforts like this could work counter to that objective and further narrow pathways and make it more difficult for students to pursue opportunities that they want to pursue? So that's my first question, is how do you panelists and others, authors, etc., think about the DQP in terms of leveling the playing field for diverse students, currently underrepresented in higher education? Simple question, easy. Carol.
Shall I stand?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So probably all the authors would like to speak to it, but the questions are combined, and a key goal of the conceptualization of the DQP and of tuning as well was to try to pull together the competing narratives of what higher education is about. The notion that we're providing broad, liberating, or liberal education to students, but also the notion that we're preparing students to actually do something with that. So by design, the DQP is trying to cut through those divisive pathways, the ones that sent some students to terminal degrees where they could do something but weren't necessarily invited to ask big questions. And by design, to say that those people who were getting an education that asked big questions really ought to be able to do something about those questions, that it's pulling together big picture thinking, real world application, and that this is intended to be a leveling field for everyone. In terms of how this works toward equity, it works toward equity only if we make equity our goal. As long as we are still willing to set up credentialing systems that are only focused on getting people ready for short-term opportunity, not connecting those by design, those short-term experiences, back to broader experiences, we will continue to have pathways that are leading in very different directions, some to real opportunity and some to just short-term paths. So we'll get somewhere on this equity issue only if we all come together around the notion that the old system is outdated, is part of the division of opportunity problem in this country, and it needs to be, I'm using the term now, intelligent redesign. We need an intelligent redesign of the pathways that lead everybody to greater opportunity. I would also want to say that the DQP makes, and here's a question for the accreditors. I had lots I would have liked to say this morning but didn't, but this is a moment to say some of it. The accreditors have been very reluctant to have any intellectual skills that they're going to hold us accountable for. WASC has courageously led and at least put a short list out, but the DQP has 2 required intellectual skills that are not on the WASC list. One of them is engaging diverse perspectives. Now this country and higher education has been in a dialogue and a change effort for 25 years to try to make diversity both a goal for learning and one of the strategies by which people achieve greater power in society. Engaging difficult difference, not just difference, but difficult difference, the inconvenient disagreements. The DQP built that into its design, but it'll only matter if it matters to people who can call our attention to what counts for accreditation. So I don't think it's enough for us to say each institution sets its own goals, not in an environment of swirl, when so many students are starting one place, piecing together their degree from other places. We really have to have some shared commitments that we are committed to as a community, that we share with the rest of society, and inclusion, making excellence inclusive, and making excellence require the ability to engage constructively with people whom you don't necessarily disagree with and whom you may not even understand very well, to see that as part of the goal of education. I think that's crucial.
I just wanted to add to Carol's pointing to what we called engaging diverse perspectives, that people understand what that means best when they see a couple of assignments. You know, for example, here is a problem for civil engineers, this is tuning, of constructing a bridge in Peru in a tribal area that goes back to wars that began to emerge before the conquistadores and then through the conquistadores, and in which tribes develop value systems about this valley and et cetera, et cetera. So that's a cultural perspective. Put yourself in that culture and see how you would interpret this. and then also technological perspective. That's why we gave you 4 examples of assignments in the DQP, one of which read, we're going to slow the rotation of the Earth from 24 to 26 hours. You write the environmental impact statement. That is engaging a diverse perspective, you know, in a different way of thinking about how life in its various forms would have to exist under those circumstances. So Carol citing that is very much what we have in mind when people see those assignments. They say, aha, so that's what they meant. Right. Okay.
Millie?
So the DQP is a beginning to deal with diversity and to deal with the students we have. But as I said earlier this morning, we really need to look at K-12. We're losing so many of our talent before they ever get to our campuses. And the other point that I want to make is that we prepare the teachers. And as preparing the teachers for our classrooms, we have to make sure that the values of diversity and inclusive excellence is embedded in the curriculum, that when we send out student teachers out into our communities, they are making that connection and being held accountable on learning how to deal with diverse populations.
Thank you. Let me go on to the next topic. I've got 3 questions I'd like to ask or read. They're a little bit different, but again, I see a connection. I think we'll probably want to answer these, though, a little bit more separately. So the first question is this. Can you tell us more about how transcripts and records of learning might relate to the DQP and tuning? That's a topic that came up in one of the earlier sessions. I really do think we need to delve more into that question. The second one, which kind of takes that same idea and builds out a little bit, says competency-based platforms in transcripts for employers will be important going forward, it seems. How can DQP inform these developments? And the last question is moving again a little bit further along that line. What is the intersection of DQP and PLA? We're not there now, but it seems like an interesting space, indeed. So let me see who would like to take on this question of transcripts, records of learning, and specifically how that relates to competency-based education, prior learning assessments, and so forth, and how the DQP intersects with those questions. That's a topic that came up in several of the sessions this morning, and I think we need to drill a little bit deeper into that. Anyone? Cliff.
Okay, because I raised the question.
And could you stand, Cliff, so that people online can see you as well?
Earlier that it was, and which came in from the field,
right,
and which we addressed in Appendix F, where we said people came in and said, "You got if you next time Doug Lederman comes around to writing an article about this, and you don't have a record-keeping system to demonstrate what it is that Millie did to earn this degree in some way, whether it's a diploma supplement or a narrative of some kind, then you're not really adopting an alternative approach to documenting proficiencies, and that's what we're after. And a lot of people have yet to address that problem. This is a very telling problem, and I think we say in the appendix when we address it, that's a very smart question, and you know it's one that ought to give everybody pause because you really got to work on this. So we're going to find a way. I'm sure all of the people in this room are smart enough to find a way there, but we haven't gotten there yet. I mean, that's an issue, and it's something that we have to do. I don't know if that answers your question. How far do you want to get on this? In industry, now we have to remember where competency-based training came from. Yes, it's training. It came from industry, and it came 40, 50 years ago. And one of the problems that we face is that higher education has blandly accepted the industry training model that Tony referred to, that people get training and other people get education, and we unfairly classify populations that way, and we push them into different institutions who do different things. And instead, what I think we tried to do, Paul and Carol, please elaborate on this, is that we tried to get beyond training to proficiency, and what proficiency meant in a very complex way that acknowledged cognitive operations that apply in both applied and mostly integrative. Right. It's all integrative, and that's what application means. I think that's right. I'm not sure.
They're very good at it. I'll just mention also one of my AAC&U colleagues, Brett Einan from LaGuardia Community College. has been doing extensive work with the electronic portfolio. And as you look at the DQP and as you look at many of the questions we've been considering, the importance of moving to that kind of database as opposed to the seat time, credit hour transcript becomes more and more apparent. Where the DQP comes in is that there needs to be some way of organizing these portfolios so that they can be read in some coherent way. And the DQP can provide a structure by which they can be organized and interpreted.
Just mention that we had a meeting that Holly actually put together and hosted at Lumina to look at the question of electronic transcripts. That's an exciting topic, I know. And the participants were mostly registrars and other people that were working on that topic. It was a fascinating conversation, at least to me. It was very, very interesting. And there was a lot of innovative ideas going around about how to update transcripts and even resumes and other kinds of records of learning and portfolios and so forth in ways that are obviously more relevant to what students need today in order to, not just to meet employers' needs, but to meet the students' need to be able to explain what they know and can do and what kind of experiences they've had, what kind of work they've produced and so forth. So as we're adding to the list with the student services professionals, it may very well be that the registrars and others on campus are others who need to be brought into this conversation as well. Based on that one conversation, I can assure you there was a lot more innovation going on in the registrar space than I certainly had expected to see, and some very, very creative thinking about the same set of issues, but approaching it from a somewhat different perspective. I've got another question now, but this is really going to the campus people that were on the panel, particularly the campus representatives, the institutions that have worked with the DQP and tuning. It's a very specific question, but I think it's a very good one. It is this: to what extent can, parentheses, and how will, institutional boards of trustees be engaged in the DQP as promoters of faculty efforts in response to or in alignment with this tool? Have any of you worked with your boards? I am sure you've had at least conversations with your boards about this work, and both what's happened and, frankly, how do you see it possibly helping in the future? Who wants to take a stab on that one? Nobody wants to talk about their boards.
Wait, I'll talk about it.
Oh, very good. Excellent.
Utah is a unique situation, but it's important here. We have a Board of Regents, and it has a faculty task force on general education that reports to the regents through the CAOs. And their primary goal, I think to get this right, Teddy, as Teddy tells them their primary goal is, give permission and don't get in the way. Because the last thing that you want is for the faculty of an institution to feel that their trustees are beginning to micromanage the curriculum. But they can do enormous good if they will say, we want you to do this. We bless it. We might even reward it someday. And that's a message that really has to go to the CAOs, because they're the ones that will translate that. But it's you've got to have that permission coming down saying, you faculty know what you're doing, we like that.
Very good. Yes.
I'm Marianne Wokak from IUPUI, and I'm president of the faculty at IUPUI. My report to the Board of Trustees on Fridays includes this project.
Very good. Oh, yes, Paul.
About a year ago, I was invited to visit the retreat of the board of one of the major flagship universities. I won't identify which one, but the president said, we would like you to come and talk about the DQP, liberal learning outcomes. We'd like you to really engage with the board members and get them interested in learning outcomes and the curriculum. Paused. But not too interested. and you know, I kind of laughed at that, but there was some truth in what he was saying, because the proper role for the board in this is a matter of a very delicate balance, to send a sense of institutional priority and support without sending a sense of micromanagement or direction. And so I took that assignment very seriously, and I hope I accomplished it.
Carol? Yes. And then, yeah.
Yes, a lot of us actually talk to boards, although I have not personally ever been asked to talk to a board about the DQP. But I do want to try to thread the needle here, because lots of institutions have picked up on another strand, many strands actually, of innovation that have swept through higher education, that have now, thanks to George Kuh's assistance, been labeled high-impact practices. Things like project-based learning, things like undergraduate research, service learning, learning communities, senior capstone projects, things of that kind, diversity learning, global learning. And many boards are having conversations led by their presidents about how many of their students are actually engaged in one or more of these high-impact practices. Those of you who just saw the big announcement from Cornell University that they hope by 2025 to have each of their students doing at least one piece of field-based learning, that's just the front wave, the part that the New York Times notices. This is going on all over the country at every kind of institution, open admissions and selective. And boards are already getting excited about that conversation because they can see, they are mostly employers, the importance of having students actually do something with their learning. And I think that's a real opportunity for the DQP, because your authors, we're all extremely familiar with that work. And if you go back and look at those proficiency statements, they're asking students to do projects, to do research, to do things that get them into the field, that engage with difference, that there's an effect designed for capstones both at the 2-year level and at the 4-year level, both in what it says about broad learning and what it says about field-specific learning. So that whole design of the high-impact practices is in the DQP, and it's a way to open the conversation or to build further on the conversation that your boards may already be having, and then in which there is already a huge amount of interest.
Yes, Ralph.
Dwayne, if I could add a point, Ralph Wolf again. Boards have the most important job to select a president and to evaluate a president. And so I'd like to go back to Millie's point and other points that are made today, that the most important job is to make student learning central and equity and completion central to the hiring and evaluation of their president. And in that case, the DQP is a tool. It shouldn't be seen as what they apply, but it's to hold the president accountable to making students and student learning central to the success of the president, not building reputation, building research, getting grant money, building endowment, the kinds of things. Aspen Institute did a study of community college presidents and search firms. They talked about how selections were made, and I was quite surprised by their results, because they found that student success was not the key element for the hiring of community college presidents. And so I think that is the critical role of making these issues central, students and learning and equity, and putting it into the evaluation of presidents.
Good. Yes, Dan.
Yeah, amen, Ralph. Stan Eichenberry from Illinois. Frank Rhodes had a great way of characterizing this dilemma in terms of board involvement, and it was noses in, yes, hands off, yes. But having said that, I think it's important to remember that the board ultimately has a fiduciary responsibility, not just for the business side of the operation, but for the integrity of the academic side as well. And at many institutions, they actually officially receive and officially approve and grant authorization for granting the degrees. So there is a, there is also an ultimate, the buck stops here kind of an argument, I think, that can be made on the part of governing boards.
Very good. I'm going to ask another question. If any of you have a question you would like to ask that either this discussion has prompted or that hasn't been asked, feel free to come up to the mics. Otherwise, I'm going to ask one more and then we'll kind of wrap up. So here's a question. I'm going to, this is one that I happen to know that the drafters actually addressed discussed. And so, Paul, I'm going to ask you to summarize that discussion, but let the other drafters as well comment on it. But I want you to start. But I think it's important. I think it's interesting, and I think many of you will be interested in their conversation around this question. Here is the question. Any recommendations on classifying language with regard to competency versus mastery versus proficiency? How best to help faculty appreciate the difference, and how can the DQP facilitate the conversation? Paul?
Well, this may be my chance to bring in Jane Austen, finally. This is one of the ideas we discussed that hit the cutting room floor. We took very seriously the responsibility the second time around of distinguishing between those interim competencies that add up at the degree level when the degree is presented to the proficiencies that the DQP attempts to define, or at least to suggest definitions of. And as we worked on that, we began to develop a kind of appreciation for that distinction and found considerable support in the respective etymologies. The Austen quote was she enjoyed a fair competence, meaning she had just enough to live on. And we discovered, as we looked at the use of the word over the centuries and over the different applications, that was, in a sense, a kind of running theme of competence. Proficiency, on the other hand, refers to a kind of platform from which one can proceed further, and in fact implies a willingness and aspiration to look further. And so we thought that this was really quite cool and that we ought to be definitive about that. We recognize that competence is used broadly in higher education. Cliff wrote an excellent paper on competence using the word that would be more widely recognized. But we like proficiency, and we're sticking by it.
And you asked a good question, and there are two kinds of languages I want to put on the table here, both of which were part of our discussions. One fell under the traditional way folks talk about learning outcomes, and they refer to communication fluency. I think we went beyond that. We said if you look at our communication language, the verbs we use, we are going beyond simply you write a grammatical sentence or you conduct a dialogue in which both your responses and the questions you ask are intelligible to the human mind. All right, so we went beyond that to specific student cognitive and expressive activities. The assumption was in English. There is one proficiency statement in there which I lost the battle on originally, and it was also pressed on us by Siebold Noorder from the Dutch higher education authority, the accreditation authority, and who's recognized, he's now with the European Commission. We're in the U.S., a country where, I repeat, 170 languages are spoken. Do we insist at all, and at what level, that our college graduates be able to converse in more than English or gather information in more than English? Particularly, and I go back to an observation this morning, when 1 out of 8 of them already comes from a family that is a non-English background organization, a family. So we started with a very, very tough competence requirement or proficiency requirement, with namely that at bachelor's level only, and then the master's assumes that at the bachelor's level a student be able to use 2 languages in a information gathering exercise with somebody else from another country, another culture, another language. Look at all the other kind of diversity issues we're getting in there. That got watered down in the end, but from pressure from the field, how could you possibly do this? We still have something in there. And I think in our negotiation, and I'll read it to you, Paul is putting over because it's worth reading how we got there, and it's still there. And we said the student conducts an inquiry concerning information conditions, technologies, or practices in their field of study that make substantive use of non-English language sources. That's as much as we got in there. That's not bad, actually. And I think it's a tribute to all of us that we managed to keep it in and keep second language present, albeit the way it is in terms of its adaptability to a variety of contexts in U.S. higher education. So, two kinds of language issues. One, the assumptions about the use of English, and the other about a language other than English. Okay?
On the competency versus proficiency, oh, Carol, did you?
Yeah, I wanted to say something further. There was a huge discussion, as right. Dwayne is more than hinting, as to whether or not we should shift from the language of the first draft, which was competency, to proficiency. And for me, the persuasive argument is simply this. Any of the proficiencies that are in the DQP is calling for the student to combine knowledge, one or more intellectual skills, and some kind of application. It might be a civic application, it might be a practical application, it might be discipline application, but all of these proficiencies call for the students to be able to put these different aspects of learning together and to practice that more than once, many times. So we're aiming at, in effect, we'd use proficiency because we're aiming at capabilities that are developed through multiple practices. There's nothing in the DQP that can be done in one course alone. And there is a language out there now that is tending to say the student will finish a course and will be declared competent in something. And it may well be that the student has shown sufficient knowledge of that course. But the competencies or the capacities we're looking for as a society call for more than a single course in anything. You don't learn to write in one course. You don't learn to do critical thinking in one course. You certainly don't learn how to engage difficult difference in one course. You need many practices, and that's the point. Many practices will add up to proficiency. And the DQP will only succeed when we're asking ourselves how often students are, in fact, being guided to practice the kinds of intellectual and practical assignments that build genuine, transferable proficiency.
All right. Do we have a...
Yeah, I had a question, building on a couple of things that I've seen today. My name is Julia Brookins. I'm with the American Historical Association, and we have a tuning project running that has been a really great experience to work with the people who have sort of self-selected for this process, and it's really been a window on a whole different set of institutions and concerns from the ones that a lot of times disciplinary societies get to see in their boards and things like that. So this is another question about stratification at a different level, and it builds a little bit on what Robert Stein said earlier this morning about where the graduate student preparation part is here, because for perfectly reasonable reasons, tuning and the DQP are working with institutions that are not the primary trainers of future faculty. And for perfectly reasonable reasons, those doctoral programs that train many of future faculty, there's not a ripple of this anywhere in those programs. And I work with graduate students, and I work with faculty who work at places like Cleveland State. They work at, Long Beach is a pioneer in this kind of thing. And there's no echo. And, looking around the room, you guys are at a certain stage in your career for the most part. And I appreciate that, and obviously this is built on, cumulative centuries of experience in higher education, which is really important, and it's why it's so great, but there's no reverberation for the early career people. And the reward structures that are all problematic for tenure and promotion are just non-existent when it comes to getting a faculty position. So, sorry, those are my concerns. My question is, for Lumina Foundation and for others who've been working on the DQP and tuning at different levels, how do you see this scale up working with regard to graduate students and early career professionals?
That's a great question. Anybody have a comment to offer on that? Yes, please.
I actually do.
Wonderful. Here's a mic right here. Paul, could you hand? Yeah. Well, for the people online.
I'm Nancy Quam-Wickham. I'm chair of the History Department at Long Beach. I'm also a CSU grad, and I am, thank you, Dr. Garcia, I'm a big fan of yours. But one of the things that I think is really important about the connection between the graduate institutions, the PhD training institutions, and the disciplines is that for a very long time, and this was certainly my experience coming out of a CSU school, and I know it was the experience of other colleagues of mine, is that this is an opportunity for institutions who want to improve access for their graduates to these PhD programs. It might be one way to sort of leverage what we do and to make institutions, you know, those 25 elite institutions, say, that train most of the tenure track folks in history or in English or in something, sit up and take notice and say, hey, perhaps we need to actually look at graduates from these institutions who have been very intentionally adopting the DQP. And so all of a sudden, I think it might be a way for us to diversify the professoriate. And so that's my optimistic view. Okay?
Very good. I'm going to ask one more question, even though we're almost out of time, and I've been doing a good job of keeping us on time, but this question is too good to pass up. Christine just handed it to me on a card. It came from Twitter, so whoever tweeted this, thank you. And it's a question that I was trying to ask earlier, but whoever wrote this actually wrote it a lot better and very clearly. And so it's a very, very clear question, I think. Here it is. How can the DQP address achievement gaps and inequity for underrepresented students? Now, I can't make it more blunt than that. That's a different question than bringing diverse viewpoints to all students, which is also extremely important. Can the DQP, and I'm looking at some of the campuses that have used the DQP that have this sort of real-world experience with it. Do you have a sense, a belief, or even an experience about how the DQP can, I guess that's an if, reduce achievement gaps for underrepresented students? Yeah.
Is it on?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I think when I speak, I'm speaking about community college students, which is an inclusive population, including underrepresented students, and that's about as far as I'm able to dig into that, because I'm not aware of separate practices within the community college exists by nature to support first-generation students. So I think what the DQP does, where necessary, is encourage the need for the scaffolding of increasing complex work. So when we had the conversation earlier when, I forget the name of the gentleman who was sitting up on the podium and spoke about training versus education, and that really resonated with me. And I would say that that is not, the faculty at my community college believes strongly in what they do. They come to community college for those reasons. But I think it could be easier to fall into the training trap than it is to fall into the education, the grapple with big questions trap. And I think that the idea of scaffolding learning has often been that one needs to learn the body of knowledge, have mastery of the body of knowledge before one does anything with it. And the DQP, when faculty create capstone level or cumulative level assignments, signature assignments at the, let's say in the freshman year, that require students to think complexly, and students aren't able to do that. When students are required to do something with their learning and they're not as successful as the faculty member would like them to be, then the faculty member has to rethink the experiences of the semester and think about ways in which the student can engage with those big questions earlier and in active ways, which elicits student voice, student agency, and it's all part of that good stuff that GEMS is all about. Is David Paris here?
Yeah, very nice. Yes.
I think any time that you lessen ambiguity and when you infuse concrete, the active language of this instrument, whenever you eliminate ambiguity and you establish this language that is clear, that is actionable, then you have created a context, you've created an environment, you've created a setting where accessibility is not an issue. Barriers have been removed with this instrument. There is not question or room for blocks. And unfortunately, context and settings for these populations that are raised in this question they've been there, right. And it's just there. This removes that layer.
Yeah, we'll comment.
Yeah, and I think in some ways I'm going to be perhaps restating what Eric is saying, but I think in many cases the sort of students that we're talking about, traditionally underserved students, they're coming from families that lack a culture of collegiate and university education. And so there's a lack of familiarity with how students move through those systems. And for me, it comes back to the issue of transparency. And when we make learning transparent and learning expectations transparent, I think it facilitates a sort of, well, it helps those students to better understand what movement through the system looks like, so that it's not requiring students to intuit what they're supposed to learn or intuit how they move through that system, but helps them to grapple with it in more meaningful ways and therefore perhaps persist. So.
Wonderful. One last comment and then we're going to have to wrap up.
One more to that. Not only does the DQP help empower students with the language to communicate what they're able to do and what they've learned and how they've learned it, which I think has an incredible equalizing equity effect. The potential is great. But I don't want to put it all on students' backs either. It's absolutely critical that as institutions rethink practice and rethink how they help students develop aspirations and communicate pathways to aspire to further education from the AA to the BA to the master's, that they're communicating the pathways and making those more clear to more students. And I think probably an example of this, I'm sorry Tim Rennick wasn't here today, because what Georgia State has accomplished in terms of reducing the achievement gap with its partnership with Georgia Perimeter College is quite exceptional, and there's a case study a little bit about this, but Tim and his colleagues at Georgia State can say more about that, but it is a lesson in an institution that has reformed itself in trying to increase equity and close racial and ethnic graduation gaps.
Wonderful. Millie, I will let you have the last word on this topic.
I think what the DQP is doing is changing the paradigm. We're putting students at the center. And if you're talking about students, then you're talking about all the students that you are serving. And in addition to that, if we are really educating our parents and our families, they become empowered to demand from our institutions the accountability we should have. And it's about time that we start to get angry about the achievement gap. And this is putting it right at the center.
Thank you very much. I have really enjoyed all of the presentations, and I would like to thank all of the presenters for the events today. Thanks to everybody online for these great questions, your active participation in this event as well. For all of you here, safe travels home. We will be taking all of the other questions, many of which are fairly specific questions about ideas around things like faculty engagement. Our friends at NALOA will be helping us put answers out to that and sharing the information. Please go to the DQP website and the further collaboration tools that will be there so that we can keep this conversation going. I really do want to thank our friends and colleagues from NALOA, not just for what they're going to be doing going forward, but also for their incredible work in putting this meeting together today for us. And to all of you, again, who stuck in with us and got us to this point, thank you very much. And we're very excited to work with all of you for a long time to come on all of these issues. So again, thanks very much. Safe travels.